Welcome back to Lessons for Life. Tonight we're rounding up the news, and the first story is about our friend Mr. William of Gates. There he is. Bill Gates says life will not return to normal until after a second generation of vaccines. Now, I am not a doctor, and nor is Bill Gates. I am not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but let's just do something that you should apparently never do, which is judge people on their appearance. How does Bill Gates come across to you? His mannerisms, his persona. What sort of a person does Bill Gates seem to be? I think there's something, and we used this word the other night, very psychopathic about Bill Gates, and I don't think I'm being unfair when I say that. There's something very odd about that man. He's completely void of any sense of humor, yet he kind of giggles when people are criticizing him and bringing up the stories about him doing untoward things in third world countries. I find Bill Gates to be a very odd chap. Now, that might be very unfair of me to say that. It doesn't have any reflection on what his qualifications are to be dealing with this pandemic. He's a self-made millionaire who's become very powerful and influential because of his millions. And what is the point of having all that money, all that wealth? Money can buy you goods and services and influence. And Bill Gates has become influential, and the hill that he has chosen to die on is vaccinating the world against the novel coronavirus. And he's already stated on record, I don't know if it's on record, but I've heard him say that if our programs of vaccination go well, we may be able to reduce the global population by whatever percentage it is that he is hoping to reduce the population by. So rather than saving lives, which I thought the vaccine was meant to be about, his stated intention is to reduce the global population. Now, maybe he's doing that for a good reason, thinks he's doing it for a good reason. If you're a gamekeeper, somebody who looks after animals, there does come a time during the year when you have to have a cull, which is when they finish off a certain section of the population, kill X amount of deer because they are over-consuming the food supply and it's messing up the food chain. And if you're a very cold, calculating, psychopath type personality, you have no problem in making that decision. And when it comes to preserving livestock, where the goal is to kill and eat the animals anyway, what sort of emotional attachment would you have to the herd anyway? And we've spoken about herd immunity. We've been talking a lot about people as if they're animals recently, and you've got the notion of herd immunity that was thought about and then dismissed, and then you've got the other people that are very skeptical about this, that are throwing the term sheeple around. Is it, what's the collective term for it is a herd? No, it's a flock, isn't it? So you've got the herd mentality, but we're accusing people of being sheep. The sheeple. Oh, if you want to have Bill Gates' vaccine, you're just one of the sheeple. You're sort of going along with the agenda. But maybe we're being treated more like cattle than sheep. I don't know. It's interesting the choice of terminology and words that get thrown around. But the idea of vaccinating a population so that you can reduce the population. I know we conspiracy theorists, tinfoil hat wearers, were throwing around the term depopulation agenda along with the Great Reset, which is something that Boris Johnson has spoken about recently. But it would appear that someone like Bill Gates does have a depopulation agenda. And maybe he's not this evil, satanic, shape-shifting reptilian, even though he does look a bit like one. Maybe he's not human in the way that he lacks the human compassion. Maybe that's what this is. And because he sees reducing the global population as being for the greater good, he thinks, well, I'm a good guy trying to do a good thing. Yes, many people will be wiped out, but for the people that are left behind, however many millions they want to reduce the world's population to, I don't know. What is the viable number of human beings? When did we get so worried about how many people we've got in Great Britain, in the world, on the planet? Isn't part of being a human being that we are not just a member of a herd? We are not livestock to be herded and cultivated and then killed and eaten. We're not enslaved like that. But someone like Bill Gates seems to talk as if we were, and maybe because he's so removed from this human empathy, he's just saying, oh well, we need to do this for the greater good. I'm being a good person, I'm doing the right thing. How many terrible things have been done in the name of the greater good? But for him it's probably a very black and white, clear-cut decision, and not really something that he's going to lose any sleep over. If you're a billionaire, do you think you ever lose sleep over any of these things? I'm not sure. But let's have a look at this story from the Daily Fail, as some people like to call it. Macho father who wanted son to be a boxer reveals how he accepted 11-year-old's dream to perform as UK's youngest drag queen after dressing up in his mother's clothes aged 8. Wow. So you've got a macho father. He wanted his son to be a boxer, just like Billy Elliot's father on that great film. So does this make it a better tabloid story? Because you've got the contrast and the male stereotype that is being left in the past. The archetypal dad wants his son to be a chip off the old block. Get in the ring, son, and do some boxing. But Billy Elliot wants to be a ballet dancer, and there's nothing wrong with that. I forget the male term for a ballet dancer. That's how sexist my brain has become. But there is a different term for a male ballet dancer, as opposed to the female. And this young chap wants to be a drag queen, not any drag queen, the UK's youngest drag queen. Gosh, that'll have them out trying to break the records. And I think it does sell, because what if this was a very effeminate father figure who was also a drag queen and wanted it to be kept in the family? Come on, son. Well, by the time I was your age, I had already done several drag queen competitions. Do they do competitions? What do they do? Pageants? What is a drag queen? What is it other than the novelty of a man dressing up in a woman, often in a very sort of exaggerated, quite mocking way, almost like not cultural appropriation, but you might call it gender appropriation. A man dressing up as a woman and everyone getting a good laugh out of it. I thought we stopped dressing up as people we're not with the demise of the likes of the black and white minstrel show. Why is it not okay for a white man to dress up as a black man for a laugh, but it's perfectly fine for a white man to dress up as a white woman, or a white boy to dress up as a white woman? I think he is white. I can't really tell from the picture. Why is that not unacceptable? And will it ever be unacceptable? Maybe it's acceptable because on the surface it would appear to be some kind of LGBTQ type issue, and people that support that cause and that identity might well champion it, but I forget what all the letters stand for. But LGBTQT, the T stands for trans, but being a transsexual is something very different to being a transvestite. And many people who dabble in a bit of transvestism are nothing to do with being homosexual. They might be straight males. I believe Eddie Izzard, the great transvestite comedian, or he has been transvestite at some point, isn't doing it as any part of his sexuality. So there's nothing necessarily about dressing as a female when you are a male that might be anything to do with your sexuality. But we're also having, tied in with this, the crisis over gender identity and sexual identity, and an 11-year-old boy dressing up as a woman. And he's not, I assume, dressing up as an 11-year-old girl. Normally when a fully grown man dons his dress and whatever it is to impersonate a woman, I take it he's impersonating a woman of the same age and race. Otherwise it's unacceptable, isn't it? Because we've had Little Britain back in the limelight and being frowned upon because David Walliams, a white male, at one point dressed up as a black female. And the objection isn't because he's portraying a female when he's a male. The objection is that he's portraying a black person for a laugh, having a laugh at them. And that's why it's objectionable, isn't it? So, as far as I understand it, drag acts have always come under the category of some kind of comedy, certainly entertainment. So why is it acceptable for a man to portray a female? And it reminds you of pantomimes. Oh no, it doesn't. I don't know if there's any pantomimes happening at the moment because of what the pandemic has done to the arts. And you've all seen the advert about Fatima, whose next job might be online, apparently, even though that wasn't Fatima. I believe that was someone's stolen picture, you know, the photo that the Tories used for their latest propaganda, and it said Fatima's next job might be in cyber, whatever the hell that means. It sounds like some kind of archaic explanation of what the internet will be. One day we'll all be working on the World Wide Web, and you can get yourself an electronic mail address. So that's the Tories being out of touch as ever. But yes, drag acts have always been something fun, something funny. I'm thinking of sort of Dame Edna. That's got to be the greatest drag queen of all time. But is it really something suitable for an 11-year-old boy to be doing? And also in Panto, traditionally, the lead male role is played by a female. So if you've been to watch Peter Pan in the theatre, if it's a pantomime, you'll have a female playing Peter Pan, for example. I think this is my earliest memory of attending pantomimes as a youngster. And you don't really question it, but I guess it is a little bit odd to have females playing males, males playing female, in this sort of fun, not serious. I mean, pantomime it's ridiculous, isn't it? It's comedy, it's silliness. Would we have the knee-jerk reaction, negative reaction? I mean, I think this has been generally perceived negatively, that you've got a young 11-year-old boy portraying an adult female. What about if you had a young girl putting on a fake moustache and beard and saying, "Hey, I'm a grown-up adult male"? Is that different? Is there something less threatening about that? Less dangerous? I don't know. Maybe I'm overreacting here, or I'm looking. Maybe it's just something innocent. Maybe there's nothing wrong, and this macho father should just get over himself, not be so insecure in his identity, and let his young boy do whatever he wants. That would seem to be what the Daily Mail, of all newspapers, would be suggesting there. But I don't know. Put it in the comments. Give me your take on this. It usually gets a very sort of polemic or divided opinion. 100% yes, 100% no. But here's another great story from a professor from a university in California, who is saying, as a white American, I am by definition racist. Now, a long time ago, not even that long ago, really, if someone had come out and said, "Hey, I'm a white American and I'm racist," and they were sort of acting like they're proud of it and not wanting everyone to challenge it, you'd think, gosh, that person's a bit right-wing, aren't they? But this is actually what the new left looks like. To be white and left-wing in America is to acknowledge that you are racist, rather than do all this dancing around and pleading and trying to say, "Oh no, I'm not racist." There's this agenda to acknowledge it and sort of set it in stone, as if here's the new definition. Forget the dictionary definition of what racist means. The new definition is that white equals racist and racist equals white. But interestingly, she has acknowledged that she's an American. So it would be worth asking, is that only because you are a white American? Is every white person in America, by your new weird definition, racist? What about white people in other countries? Is it only because white people came to America as colonialists, although not all of the white people in America are descended from colonialists? Many of them fled famine, persecution, religious persecution, and all the rest of it. Bring me your, whatever the quote is. But is it because the white population supplanted the native inhabitants and drove them off their land? Is that what makes her, by definition, racist? Because this influx of foreign invaders obliterated the Native American population. I wonder if that's why being a white American by definition makes you racist. Because the people that believe in this will tell you that no, it's impossible for black people to be racist. It's impossible for any minority to be racist. And you end up doing these sort of mental gymnastics to come up with a scenario where they could see sense and realize that actually anyone could be racist. What about this? What about this? What about this? What about in a country such as wherever? And the whole notion of white privilege is a very American-centric take on global events, because most people in the world are not white. I put it to you that in most places in the world, being white would not be an advantage. Or would it? Would it? Is it an advantage in majority black Kenya, for example? Is it an advantage to be the colour of the previous colonial powers, the occupiers, the British that owned Kenya? Is it an advantage in majority Indian India to be the colour of the colonialists? Maybe it is. Maybe white people have dominated the world so much over the past few centuries that it's an advantage to be white anywhere in the world. But I find that hard to believe, and I think if you think that way, you are living in the Western bubble, and you've almost kind of capitulated to the racism and the racist idea that white is the norm and anything else is other, is something else, is oppressed. And we can get into the oppression Olympics, but certainly in a post-colonial world, it will not be an advantage to be a white person if you are in a country that is majority non-white. And apparently America is heading that way. Although white people are still the largest ethnic group in the United States, they will soon be less than half. So a plurality, but not an outright majority. And then I wonder if people like this professor will then get over the idea and change their mind and say, okay, well, maybe now being white doesn't mean that I'm necessarily, by definition, a racist person because of the colour of my skin, which is, of course, in itself, it's a racist idea. But on the topic of racism, someone who's never been racist is good old Big Bird there. There he is, all 8 foot tall of him. Sesame Street teaches children to stand up against racism in TV special. Now, I thought Sesame Street, and I was brought up on Sesame Street, so never did me any harm. I thought Sesame Street was consistently, implicitly campaigning against racism, because everyone on the programme is of a different race. They're all a mixture of races, and all the Muppets, or whatever they call them, Big Bird and Elmo, they're all literally different colours, aren't they? And you've of course got the LGBTQ representation with Bert and Ernie, who were possibly a gay couple, but we don't know. But kids don't need to know about that sort of thing, do they? Or do they? They do if they're dressing up as a girl aged 11 when they're a boy. But at what point do we teach children not to discriminate against people because of their sexuality and their gender, and at what point do we do the same regarding racism? And do we do the racism first because it's more age appropriate, or can you just bring children up in a way that is accepting of everyone and everything, and then you don't really need to spell it out? Oh, by the way, don't be racist. You see a lot of those pictures that look like sort of United Colours of Benetton adverts, where it's all the children of different races, and people say, oh, you know, no child is naturally racist. So we don't. It's not that we need to learn not to be racist. We need not to learn to be racist. It's actually a mentality that we acquire, presumably from our environment, probably from our parents, and you will find children that have racist parents grow up to be a little bit racist themselves, but probably less so. We progress, don't we? And we look back on the previous generation who were a little bit racist, and we sort of feel a bit embarrassed and say, oh God, yeah, listen to my granddad, he still talks about N-word brown colour, or such and such a unacceptable term for whatever ethnic group, and we cringe at the previous generation. So maybe the children should be teaching us. You know, I believe that children are the future. But I wonder I'd love to see the episode. I haven't watched an episode of Sesame Street. Oh gosh, it has been, it's been months now. But it's a great show, and it's probably why a lot of British kids, when they're playing with their toys, tend to put on a American kind of accent. But here's the greatest leader in the world. Vladimir Putin called on all sides of the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh to suspend hostilities for humanitarian reasons. And what better reason could you have to stop hostilities in a disputed region? Yeah, some humanity. I thought Kim Kardashian was going to come to the rescue here and save the day, and I called it out online before she spoke out on the conflict. And being a proud Armenian, she does often address issues in the news that are relevant to the Armenian population. She spoke out on Syria when a Syrian Armenian village was being laid siege to by the Takfiri fanatics that descended on Syria. And she also spoke to Donald Trump about prison reform. So there's an example of an influential person using that clout for good, but she's not quite as influential in the region as good old Vladimir Putin, who is a real Orthodox Christian, and he of course feels for his fellow brethren, the Armenians, who are 99% Orthodox Christian. It was the first officially Christian country in the world, I believe. So there is this solidarity, and also strategically in the region, Vladimir Putin can't afford to have his allies, neighbours, succumbing to the kind of terrorists that might be on their way to help out, to help muck in the conflict. There's Bashar Al Assad, who says it's very probable Turkey is ferrying Syrian militants to fight in the Erdogan-instigated conflict. And we're using the term Syrian very loosely here because, of course, a lot of the so-called rebels, moderate rebels in Syria, were not Syrian at all. And what started as the Free Syrian Army ended up not Free Syrian or indeed an army. It were comprised of these mercenaries. And it's a strange term to have a jihadist mercenary. I thought people that are struggling in the way of their religion, as they understand it, would be doing it out of their idea of piety, but these people are actually being paid as well. And if you've seen the destruction that they've caused in Syria, you wouldn't want that to happen in Azerbaijan or in Nagorno-Karabakh, which is part of Azerbaijan. Thank you, Stalin, 100 years ago, for making sure that Nagorno-Karabakh was part of Azerbaijan, even though the population there are ethnic Armenians. But this is the problem we've said before about international borders. They don't always line up with where people live. And that's why the ethno-state is kind of an archaic idea. I know a lot of people still would love to have one. A lot of people look at places that do have one and think, gosh, isn't that great? Couldn't we be like them? Or some people get jealous and hate ethno-states and say, look, you've got one, but you don't let me have one. But I think we need to find something else to rally around for our nation states, not just our DNA, not just our ethnicity, but there has to be something. We can't just say, come one, come all, have the... If you've got no borders, you've got no country at all. But flooding across the border into Azerbaijan are many of these so-called jihadists. And as I said, they're being paid very handsomely. And I wonder if Turkey and Erdogan have an eye on some kind of unification, some kind of greater Turkey. We spoke about Greater Armenia and the diaspora of Armenian people. Most Armenians do not live in Armenia. There's Armenian populations in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iran, scattered by, not least of all, the Armenian genocide about 100 years ago. So there is an Armenian homeland, there is an Armenian state, but the homeland is bigger than the state, and many Armenians and Greater Armenia lies outside the Armenian borders. But what about a greater Turkey? Because Turkey, being one of the Turkic nations, as it's populated by people that left Central Asia centuries ago, has a common linguistic and cultural identity with places like Azerbaijan. What if you had some kind of a Turkic union? Could Erdogan be eyeing that? And would there be enough common identity among the Azeri people with the Turkish people, who have described them as a brotherly nation? Certainly ethnically they are closely related. And I wonder about religiously, because if I am correct, and I haven't done the research on this one, I think Azerbaijan, what sect do they follow in Azerbaijan? Are they Shia? I think they might be majority Shia, maybe a slight majority. And of course, Erdogan is a Muslim Brotherhood style, his party are Muslim Brotherhood style. And of course, Sunni. But Erdogan has enough problems with the Sunni Muslim Kurds in his country because they're a different ethnicity. So maybe as much as he portrays himself as an Islamist, he's actually a racist. Here we go. The population of Azerbaijan is 85% Shia and 15% Sunni. That's interesting. So it's the common ethnic identity that is causing Erdogan and Turkey to back their brothers in Azerbaijan, presumably, and not out of, unless he's become suddenly non-sectarian whatsoever, it would seem to be an ethno-nationalist loyalty rather than a religious Islamic duty that he's burdened himself with. So it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds. I hope that Vladimir Putin can save the day as usual. He usually does. The great hope, the great Russian hope, we'll call him. But yeah, we'll watch this space. Thank you so much for joining me and watching. It's been a shorter one than usual, wrapping up the news. I'm going to do more of these little takes on current affairs. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, share it, share alike. And if you disagreed with anything I said, please put it in the comments and tell me why, and we'll debate it. I know I'm very polemic. I'm very one-sided very often, but the beauty of this conversation is that you can have your response, have your say, and if you do it without swearing, we'll not have a problem. And someone was making comments on the video the other day, and I could see that their comment was appearing and deleting. If that's happening to you, it is not me. Find your way around it. If you need to talk in code, talk in code. Do what you've got to do to get your voice heard, and I'll continue giving you this platform. This has been Lessons for Life. We'll do it all again soon. HK Stocks is popping in just to say peace, nice one, was nice to listen. Thank you so much. We were here and we are gone. Latest.